Got him.
I'm horrible. I'm so bad at this.
How how was your
I've been
Christmas?
Christmas was nice, New Year's was nice, but for the past 2 days, on and off, of course, it hasn't been all consuming or anything. But I've been trying to think of things for topics, and usually it comes easily. And this time it did not come easily.
I've had bad weeks like that where me and Scott just like we're like nothing's connecting. Nothing's
Nothing's
connecting.
connecting. I couldn't even,
Mhm.
usually I'll think of like, I'd love to talk about Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, that's easy enough. Now I just got to find three people in it or three stories. No problem, and then it's fun and easy. I couldn't even think of like what I wanted to talk about.
Well, this is like a lost week anyway. It's like
Yeah.
you don't even know what day it is.
Right.
It's a weird 8 days, 9 days.
Yeah, if I
It's
had a nickel for every time someone in my house said, "What day is it today?"
Yeah.
yeah. It's the time when I seen someone that said it you can wear stretchy pants, like the rules, all rules go out the window. You can wear exactly, you can wear your stretchy pants, you can
I've
whatever you
had
want
these
to do.
same sweats on for 2 days and haven't shaved or showered in 2 days, and there's a hole in the crotch.
Keep the mouse in the
Happy
house.
New Year, Michelle. How you doing, Kristen? Hello, Jim.
Keep the mouse in the house. This is a family show.
Yeah, that's all right. I got it all covered, literally. Wrestling would have
Hey,
been a good topic today. I still have time to change it.
hey, look outside. It's not quite. I don't know if you can see it. There, maybe
Dark.
see the snow sitting on the ground right before it's getting dark. So it's you kind of almost can't see it, but you can see the snow on the ground. We have probably inch and a half, 2 inches out there right now. So, yeah, it's maybe a high of 24. So it's
Well,
lovely.
everybody had a good New Year's. Everybody had a nice Christmas. Holiday season is basically traditionally behind us for another year.
Mhm.
The next major event, I guess, is me turning 55 on February 1st. I'm not really looking thrilled to that. But speaking of birthdays, the oldest Gen Xers have now officially started turning 60 years old. Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
60
Wow.
years old. Kristen says, I'm not even going to ask you why there's a hole in your sweatpants. I don't know. These things they just happen. So are pants optional to watch the show? Asking for a friend, JTR. You can wear whatever or don't wear whatever you want. You are literally our virtually live studio audience. So pants are absolutely optional, which brings us to
I
what it
saw.
is we're all doing here.
Hey, John. I saw the when you were talking about Gen X and turning 60. I saw a really terrifying chart the other day because they were talking about the new generation beta. I guess
Beta.
starts next year, which is
No, it
weird.
started.
It feels like we just had alpha, but they showed the chart, and it's the silent generation, which I think of like great grandparents.
My
Uh,
dad was silent, Jen.
yeah, but I know, but it feels older, like really
Mhm.
boomers, and then Gen X, and then all the other like six generations. And we're like, we're down
Z,
near,
alpha, beta.
we're getting right into
We're
the.
kind of in the middle still. We're still the generational middle child. There's still our silent gen around, the boomers that are never going away, then us. And then there's Z and alpha. So we're squarely in the middle. Beta's just getting started. So I'm still running with middle aged, middle child, middle everything. Um,
You're just moving out of
that's
the
my story, and
35.
I'm sticking to it.
You're moving out of the 35 to 54 Nielsen category in a couple of years.
You know
No,
you're old when you moved out of a Nielsen category.
they don't even care anymore. It's not a bracket. It's over 55.
That's it. That's all it is. There's no bracket.
No, I did a video where I incorporated the Friends episode where Joey found out he turned 30, and he's like, "No, God, why? I thought
Why?
we had a deal. Let everybody else get old, not me." But yeah, there's all these brackets, and then it's over 55. Winnie turned 50 today.
Who?
We're talking Winnie Cooper.
Winnie the Pooh?
Winnie the
No.
Pooh's older than 50 because he's in
Is
the
he?
public domain now.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't realize that. Happy birthday to everyone turning, whatever your birthday is in December here.
So
LA,
same year, but I'm 1970, but I'm on the other end of it, February 1st. All right, so let's get started. Why
yeah.
not, right?
Yeah.
Before I forget whatever topics I just put together in my brain all of 4.5 minutes ago. Welcome to the Three View Mirror. a weekly edition of the show where you guys get to be a part of the shenanigans we pull week in and week out as part of our virtually live studio audience. The three hosts you see on camera are just part of our show. We are the ones that have the duty, love it, coming together every week with three topics that span the greatest generation of time: 70s, the 80s, the 90s, Generation X. One topic, presumably from each or all of those decades. And the cool thing is, somewhere within those three topics, there's something that binds them together. Sometimes it's really obvious, sometimes not so obvious, sometimes completely and totally out left field. But something binds those three topics together, and it's the three hosts' job to try to figure it out, along with those of us sitting in our chat room. We are our virtually live studio audience. So this week, I get to be the host. My name is John Cotredes, better known as Gen X Jono across my media platforms. I'm joined by two friends. Michelle, kick us off.
Hi, I am Rochelle Oblak, better known as Gen Eggshell across social media, of which I've been taking an extended break from, so that you guys haven't seen me for well over 2 months, haven't published a thing, but I will be back here very shortly, back online. There you go. Promise. Come visit me on my Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok, if TikTok sticks around.
And I'm Chris Clues, better known as Chris Clues, keynote speaker and author. I focus on the lessons that we can learn for life and work from 80s pop culture. And hopefully I'll be in a city near you at some point. And Scott asked, who the hell is on my shirt? It's Grace from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one righteous dude.
They say he's a righteous dude.
That's what I have on my chalkboard right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's actually what you have there.
Yeah, they think he's a righteous dude, Ed.
Here's cheers. Yeah.
And once again, connecting our brains, I literally just did a post that included some of the sitcoms from the 80s that we all forgot, one of which was Ferris Bueller.
Oh, yeah. One season, right?
One season only, and one of 4 pilots that failed miserably for Jennifer Aniston before the 5th came along and was the charm. Well, at any rate, this is the Three View Mirror.
Loading heads.
Well, when I mentioned, somebody said you forgot Gen Y, and I didn't mean to mention Gen Y, but if I included the millennials, it would have skewed us out of the middle. So I had to cut somebody out. It's usually us that's forgotten, so I'm okay with it either way. But let's get started. All right, I got my topics today, and I don't think anybody's going to get this one. I think this one's going to, if the connection's there, it's easy enough to prove, but we'll see how good you guys are. The first topic is Roots from the 70s. Second topic is North and South from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And the third topic is Aliens.
Ooh.
Not the movie, just extraterrestrials like the ones that might be visiting us over the skies of New Jersey and every drone that you guys see out there.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, I can start off talking about Roots.
Yeah, and that's where I thought I'd start. Now, for me, it was a big deal. Miniseries were a big deal. 70s and 80s. There's tons of them we could talk about. I picked 2 to tie into my topic today. But Roots, we watched at home with parents. I had to watch parts of it at school.
Now, see, I've never watched, I think I watched it as an adult years later because I thought it was an important thing to watch. But if I remember correctly, and you have to correct me because it's been, I couldn't even tell you how many years it's been since I've seen it. I might have seen it when I was 18 or 19 years old and then never saw it again. And movies, there's some more modern movies like Amistad or things like that stick in my brain under the same topics more than Roots did, only because I was younger. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what year it came out, but I remember my mother watching it. And we were not allowed to come into the room to watch it because of I think it was brutal. I think it was nakedness. I think there was things in there. And at the time we were not, that's what I remembered of Roots, was that we were not allowed to go in and watch it. we were always given instructions in, my mom told us what it was about, but we couldn't watch it at the time. What year did it come out, John?
Came out in 1977. So I was 7. You would have been what, 4 or 5?
4, yeah. And maybe when it goes on those loops of repeats, probably 4 or 5 years later, I still might have only been 8 or 9 years old, and I was not allowed to watch it at that time.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the miniseries, and that was such a huge part of television back then. It felt like an event, whether it was Roots or another miniseries. It just felt like an event because they would market it for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. It's coming. It's coming. It's going to be on this Sunday. It's for 5 Sundays straight or 3 nights in a row. And people made
3, 4, 5 nights in a row. They played it in sequence.
Yeah.
And the competition begged out. Like when Roots was playing, the other 2 networks, because of course there were really only 3, took a break. They played reruns. They didn't even try to compete. They knew it was a losing. I don't know if they knew they couldn't compete or if it was like a gentleman's agreement where, we spend a lot of money. We went on location. We put this thing together. You 2 have to back off, and we'll do the same when it's your turn.
Yeah, and I think they did that with a lot of miniseries also because it was hard for them to compete with it anyway. If it was a great story, they weren't going to be able to compete because once that miniseries was done, there wasn't a repeat anytime soon or a way for us to record and stream until, the 80s a little bit. You could record on VHS, but that would have required 5 or 6 VHS tapes for one miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember, it's been a long time since I've seen it too, but I do recall a lot of the cast. And one of my favorite actors growing up was Louis Gossett Jr.
Yep.
He was one of the main characters in Roots. What is that?
It's got to be Shell's house.
Oh, I do hear it. It's you know what? It's so subconscious. That's a dog and a squeaky toy. He got new toys for Christmas, so yeah, it's a dog.
Okay.
So
you mentioned number 1. I watched it in pieces as a kid. Like at 7 years old, even my Greek immigrant parents knew enough when that warning came and flashed across the screen and said, this contains violence and nudity and adult themes, parental discretion is advised. They're like, okay, maybe not for Zani. So I do remember getting pushed out of the TV viewing area. And I remember as a kid that pissing me off. So I didn't lose one night of TV. I lost 5 in a row. So that was sick. But we did later watch, like I said, edited versions in school. It did come back. Let me go over some of the people in the cast.
Yes.
John Amos, LeVar Burton, Lou Gossett Jr., Ben Vereen, O.J. Simpson, Robert Reed, Mr. Brady, Ed Asner, Cicely Tyson, Lorne Green, Maya Angelou, Ralph Waite, who was Mr. Walton from the Walton, Lloyd Bridges, Todd Bridges, who would have been 6? These things were no joke. I can't imagine the budget for the time. Everybody, or maybe actors were like, you know what, we'll jump in no matter what and take a pay cut just because it's such a big deal to be in it. That's an amazing cast.
Yeah, I had no idea. I don't even think thinking backwards that I would have remembered that Lou Gossett Jr. was in it because I would have watched it at a time when maybe I didn't know who Lou Gossett Jr. really was, at, I don't know, 18 years old. I shamefully, I think the first thing I remember Lou Gossett Jr. from was Jaws 3D. I think it was.
He always played that same character, didn't he? This is the one time he didn't play that guy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, but I didn't realize OJ was in it, or actually Maya Angelou herself, being in there. That's amazing.
I'd be hard pressed to imagine that you were a black actor, actress, personality of the time, and not try to get connected to this project. I'm surprised JJ from Good Times isn't in it, or Bill Cosby of the day. OJ's there, why not Bill? But it was important television. And to your point, Shell, earlier, there was nudity, there was brutal violence in it. They didn't hold back. Another miniseries that did similar was Winds of War, which was like the World War II biopic. And there was nudity and violence and all kinds of things. They went where the storyline took them, and the fact that it was on network television didn't stop it.
Yeah, I think the networks. I think the FCC gave them grace when they were telling a story that needed to be told in the way that it happened. Not you couldn't censor. You couldn't do Roots and censor it. You couldn't do Winds of War and censor it. You had to tell the story as it was. You were telling history, and I imagine behind the scenes the FCC gave these networks some grace when it came to that, and being able to tell the story, because otherwise it wouldn't have made sense. You know who did the music was Quincy Jones.
He did everything. I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised
about this list that John just gave us, and then just add Quincy Jones to it as well.
Yeah. Kristen in here said the network didn't think it was going to be any good, and so then they showed it all at once. You know, and
I don't. Copious amounts of research that I did in the 3 minutes that I came up with this. That escaped me. Hey, Life, good to see you. I was wondering who Janet was. Kristen, where did you hear that? Because it was such an enormous project. These things went on like it was a Sweeps Weeks replacement is the idea. So think of the miniseries as the opposite of Sweeps Weeks. It was usually when nothing was really going on. They had dead time to fill, and that's why they threw these things on. So there really was no way to lose. Hey, Breezy, good to see you. I just remember the opposite. I remember what Chris, not saying that you're wrong, but I remember what Chris said, just the absolutely inordinate amount of hype before every one of these.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, Rochelle just like, oh, it's you, Shell.
I just typed it in for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like Costner's Horizon movie with 4 parts back in the day probably would have been a pretty good miniseries. It hasn't done that well at the box office, but those are the type of stories that were told over the course of 12 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours, where they were telling this immense story. And I think even if you haven't seen Roots for a while, you just say the word Roots and immediately it's like we talk about a lot of times, these stories, these titles, these characters, these actors that are just ingrained in pop culture. Even if you never saw the series, if somebody says Roots, you're like, oh, I never saw it, but I know.
Yeah. Well, and Life, under the name of Janet, I think he's on his wife's phone right now, brings up Kunta Kinte or Chicken George. These are names which it's kind of shocking that it stays with me, at least so many years later, when I mean, come on. My first instinct would have been that this would have been when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. I agree with Shell. I don't think I often saw it again beyond that. I see people putting guesses into the chat. No love. I've seen like 4 different guesses. Stop it. Wait until we're done.
And the whole idea of the miniseries, we've taken that now and the historical miniseries, and the fact that I think why would that movie stick in my brain as as soon as you said Roots, you said those memorable parts of it. And I don't remember much of the movie, having seen it as an adult then, but it burned in my brain that this was the one thing I was literally banned from watching on TV, because almost everything that you could do, if you had cable or not, and we didn't, if you were network TV was pretty much not off limits. I mean, it went off the air at a certain point after a certain hour. You saw the American flag and the wind down in the snow, so there was really nothing too off limits that your parents wouldn't at a certain point. At 9 o'clock you went to bed, they watched their shows. This was the first time that I can remember, and I think that's why it's burned in my brain, is that no, do not come in this room. You are not permitted to watch this. This is not for you. Yeah, so that
didn't happen to us Gen Xers a whole heck of a lot.
No.
As Gen Xers, as the kids that grew up on neglect and hose water, we also grew up on a whole host of a lot of things that were age inappropriate, whether it was our movies, our music, our television, all of it.
Yeah.
But I remember, like you, and I've got a different background. Like I said, my parents were kind of clueless when it came to American pop culture. They didn't catch on too quickly. We were able to float a lot by them just based on the fact that they were ignorant of a lot of the things US they just didn't know. They knew. They got this one. They go to bed. You're not allowed to watch this. And at that point in time, we didn't have a second TV, so we literally were just ushered into our rooms. Go to bed early. We're watching this.
And you know, and another thing about that is that I lost my train of thought. There it went. It went right out.
Let it go. I can just see it going across. It's all right. We got to bring.
Just went right across the screen. I don't know. I don't know what I was going to say.
You know who else was in Roots and it's so weird because
I don't think I missed anybody.
What?
I'm surprised. I mean, who else did I miss?
Oh, I know what.
Well, no, I mean because he died on set a few years later in the Twilight Zone. It was Vic Morrow, and there was a helicopter crash. I think it was the Twilight Zone. Somebody can correct me if I'm missing the movie, but I think it was a Twilight Zone, and they were in the helicopter, and the helicopter crashed, and he and a couple of child actors died. And Vic Morrow was one of the characters in Roots.
I remembered what I was going to say. You know, I think a lot of us Gen Xers got to grow up and watch things and do things that were, for all intents and purposes, age inappropriate. Why did this movie not pass that bar? And I think it was because we grew up inherently knowing, or were taught, I'm not sure which one it was, knowing the difference between a make-believe horror, a make-believe something, and one that was based in reality. And this being based in reality, this was like, I need to shelter, you know, our parents didn't feel the need to shelter us from the fake stuff that, you know, we all knew was fake. You could watch Nightmare on Elm Street really early because we all knew Johnny Depp wasn't getting blown up in a fountain of blood on a bed. You know what I mean? But this was real. And that was why I think we weren't allowed to watch it, was because they didn't want to show us what the real world was yet. We, you know, that not quite. We weren't ready for that yet.
That's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, but it makes total sense.
Yeah, I knew I had a point. It did leave for a moment, but it came right back in.
Yeah, Kevin mentioned Lauren Green from Battlestar Galactica, which will go into our third topic of aliens, maybe.
You're not in the 55 plus bracket like John yet, so
I'm not there yet.
You can actually get it back when it
not there yet. Listen, I had a moment not too long ago. I think I might have told you guys this. It was the first ever moment where I was going downstairs and I was like literally still on like the stairs, forgot why I was going downstairs, started to turn around, go back up, made it to the top of the stairs, remembered what I wanted, started back down again, and forgot for a second time.
Welcome to your 50s.
I mean, come on, that's insane. And yet, I remember all of this stuff. Yeah. The director of Roots came out to say he made it up. It had nothing to do with his history. Yeah, it was absolutely a work of fiction set in a historical backdrop. And it was that backdrop of watching families torn apart and the slave trade and seeing what happened to them when they came here and trying to grasp freedom. I mean, it did what all things miniseries in the 70s and 80s did. It went on location. It had changes where it took you all over the world. I mean, it was, I can't say this enough, a really, really big deal. And, you know, for people that maybe didn't go out to movies a whole lot or see, this was a theatrical event. It just happened to be on our television sets.
Normally it would be something you would pay for because of the levels of, you know, not appropriate for TV. Or maybe if you were one of the kids that had HBO or Cinemax, this would have been one of the things that were on HBO or Cinemax, you know.
Again, back to what I talk about all the time, and you know, John mentioned it, going on location and the difference that it makes when, you know, it's a real piece of land. It's not something that's just kind of being manufactured after the fact. And I don't know, I'm just guessing that in a movie or miniseries as important as Roots, that the actors being in a real environment it just may make a huge difference when you're just acting in front of a green screen versus like we're on this plantation, we're at this house, we are here where maybe some of these things may have occurred, that would make a difference in the emotion rather than just being kind of in front of a green screen. And that's important when you're telling a story, whether this, the history is real, the story may be, these fictional characters, but it's important that the actors and actresses feel the emotion of that. And I don't think you can get it in a studio.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right. Well, that brings up our time, and I think it's a good time to flip because another mini series, another big major event. This one, 1985, going on 40 years now. So it's just celebrating its 45th year when it came out, and that's North and South. And now this one I do remember watching. I've seen it more than once. Roots also had a follow-up story, if I remember right. I think Haley was the author. I think he did something after the fact as well. North and South also came from a novel, also made its way to television, and also did all those things, big miniseries, huge cast, on location, many different places, went all week on television. And this one we were allowed to watch.
Only I didn't see it.
Really?
No. And now it's not to say that I was 12 and I was probably just not in, I was probably outside until dark or something and never really, it wasn't in my time then. I have never actually seen the entire miniseries at all. I know of it. I will say it was interesting to know about the North and South, but whenever I was younger, I was the one watching Gone with the Wind year after year after year after year. And my mom
this
said,
would have been right up your wheelhouse.
I know. My mom said it was nearly the same. She liked it, and I never watched it.
I mixed the metaphor there.
That's what she said.
That's what she said. Right up your wheelhouse.
Right up your wheelhouse.
Kevin mentions the breakup of families and brother versus brother. So similar themes, but obviously a continuation almost, taking us from Roots. It's later in time. You see what slavery, in part at least, did to the United States and the Civil War. And I know there were other things like states' rights involved and all sorts of things, but North and South played it really well. No, there was no, the North was the bad guy and the South was the good guy, or vice versa. It showed vices of both. It showed families being torn apart. It showed the sprawling plantations of the South and what a privileged lifestyle looked there. I remember girls loving it in part because of the wardrobe was phenomenal. They spent a ridiculous amount of money on costuming, both North and South. And I just remember girls coming to school like almost being romantically, like missing the romance of the era because it was just different. Now, I've got to assume everybody stunk to high heaven because was indoor plumbing a major thing yet?
A lot of sweat too. I'm pretty sure that you weren't washing. That's why they wore the undergarments, and the dresses on the outside didn't get a washing very often, so.
I mean, I remember watching a little bit of it because my mom loved the period pieces, and in particular, she loved the Civil War period pieces and the post-Civil War, and then also, for whatever reason, she loved all the royalty stuff, which I never understood. So I kind of got stuck watching a little bit of it, and because it had Patrick Swayze and it had Benson, Robert Guillaume, and Benson was one of my favorite shows. So I watched a little bit of it. I didn't think I probably understood a quarter of it in terms of the impact at the time. But to your point, a huge sleeping one with a lot of great actors and actresses, some that were already Hollywood stars and others that were getting their shot.
Yeah, the fact that Patrick Swayze nailed got the part that he got. This was his breakout. This was his first big time being introduced to anybody and nailed it. And
Red Dawn.
Yeah. Would have been the same year or a year earlier, but in terms of broad audience.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. He definitely got a bigger audience out of that. Yeah.
I just remember, like, again, it being this event. I can't overplay the fact that miniseries were things that we don't really have today. Because what's funny is a miniseries running, 5-6 episodes? That's like half a season today.
Mm-hmm.
and we binge watch that in less amount of time. So we took what was a mini series in the 70s and the 80s, and now we'll throw Netflix on or Apple TV and binge watch over the course of 4 or 5 days an entire series. We're basically creating our own mini series again, but instead of everyone was watching the same thing at the same time, now we're all just binge watching our own curated experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And if you want a modern miniseries that's kind of north and south, on Apple TV, there's one called Manhunt that's 6 or 7 episodes, and it's the story of the hunt for John Wilkes Booth.
Yes, I watched that.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
I didn't finish it. It lost me for some reason.
Really?
I forgot completely that I was watching it. Now that you mention it, we're somewhere where he's hobbled and living in someone's house, but we stopped. I don't know why.
It was Dr. James Mudd.
Yeah.
Anyway, I loved it, but it did remind me a lot of those miniseries of the past.
The thing that got me with North and South is there's a moment, and I love it when pop culture, when television, when movies actually plays a role in educating. We knew quite a bit. I always think it's funny, like throughout school, we learned about the Revolutionary War. That we had that beaten into our heads. We knew everything about it. War of 1812. Okay, I know that it was in 1812. Spanish-American War, I think we touched on. Civil War, we hit hard again. You know, it tore apart our nation. We had to fight for the unity of our country. World War I and especially World War II, no doubt.
Yeah.
Vietnam, we didn't touch it with a 12-foot pole. It was political wildfire. There was no way teachers were going to talk about something that our parents, our aunts, our uncles, lost people. And it was way, way, way too close. Yeah. But I loved that the Civil War, as much as I knew about it in 6th and 7th grade, it still shocked me because I didn't realize the North was as guilty of slavery as the South. It just wasn't based on ethnicity or color. The way they ran their factories in the North, they basically starved them, didn't pay. Patrick Swayze's character says, "We take better care of our slaves than you do your employees." And that stuck with me for like 40 years later. I still think of that. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow. I mean, that's just something I didn't see at all, but it was right there. Children, there was no rights as far as limiting their hours. The conditions were horrible. People were dying in the factories. They were starving them. They were barely paying them. I'm like, that kind of thing to come out of a miniseries was like a shock to me.
Yeah, I used to watch a show called Cities of the Underworld that was on, I think, the History Channel. And this guy would, there's these cities under the big cities in a lot of history as well. And he talked about that. I think it's in New York City underground. There are still these tunnels where they kept the kids who were the slave labor for the factories, and they would take their shoes and then they would put broken glass everywhere so they couldn't get away. And there's still these big piles of shoes under New York City and in San Francisco, I believe, as well. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
But the point is, it's all history. These are the footsteps that as a civilization we've taken. And there's horrible wrong turns that we've made, and hopefully we have learned from it. But it's like we need to retain the knowledge of our history, to make sure that we don't repeat the same errors over and over again. I miss that. I miss events, I guess, on television that draws all of our eyes. The closest I've come to it in recent memory was during COVID, when we were all watching everything Netflix had to offer because we couldn't do anything else. We were prisoners in our homes. So everybody watched everything.
Tiger King.
Oh my God.
Tiger King. Who didn't watch Tiger King? Oh my God. Like, seriously. Yeah. I think Tiger King was wrongly so, an event that everybody watched at that point.
It was.
Yeah.
What else was the one with just the drug family?
Oh, that was more recent. The one with where Matthew Broderick played the.
No, not that one. Going back, Ozark was another one that I think everybody saw.
Yeah.
The Kevin Costner you mentioned, that kind of felt like a miniseries feel, but it wasn't by design. It was because we had no other choice.
And now you got to watch The Kings of Tupelo if you want something.
Everybody keeps saying that. I don't know. It's not drawing me.
If you want something as crazy as Tiger King that involves Elvis impersonators, you got to watch The King of Kings of Tupelo.
It involves Elvis impersonators.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm there. I love Elvis. So yeah, I'm there. I'm
And
there.
you're gonna love it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I kind of beyond. I mean, I guess again, some of these streaming shows that are 4 episodes, 5 episodes, 6, they are mini series. I mean, that's still they just
Well,
don't
it's funny they've changed the
oh,
terminology. They're listed as limited series.
limited. Yeah.
But they don't. A lot of those, I guess, the limited series wrap themselves up. But all the series now that are 5 and 6 episodes that you say could be turned into those things, they don't wrap themselves up. And then here you are waiting because Hollywood seems to have its wheels like ground to a halt. And I know there's been strikes and different things like that. And COVID played a big part in that. But it's like a year and a half later before you can see the cliffhanger that ended at the end of one season going into the next. You know, what was nice with everybody focused on the TV with those mini series, and I'm sure you could probably name a whole bunch more from the 70s,
Yeah.
80s, 90s, was that they wrapped themselves up in one neat little package and it was over. And you felt satisfied. You never had to wait for the next one to come along. The only next one you had to wait to come along was the next topic, the next mini series of whatever it was.
And to your point, I mean, I've been watching people list them. There was the Thornbirds, V. We can use V to transition into our third topic in a moment here.
Love
But V, I think, was squarely aimed at us kids.
Mhm.
I know parents watched it too, but come on, watching or unhinge your jaw to swallow a gerbil. You had England, Robert England from the Nightmare on Elm Streets as one of the aliens. I mean, that's as good a transition as any, and we can pivot by using V as our third miniseries to get into aliens if you want, because I'm pretty sure you both have seen that.
Well, I wanted to real quickly with the miniseries before you wrap up. So I want to go back to a point you made, John, earlier, which was the cast and the amount of people who wanted to be part of a miniseries. And that's something that we're missing today because we had that in music too. We Are the World and all of these like gatherings of these incredibly successful, popular, talented people who brought their talents all together to a TV show, to a miniseries, to a music event, whatever it was. And that kind of unity when it comes to our entertainment doesn't seem to be there anymore. But anyway, we can go to aliens, but it just
No, you're 1,000%
Agreed.
right. Kevin says Richard Gere was excited about the gerbil scene. I already see in the stands of our virtually live studio audience how excited everybody is to even, aliens is one thing. I guess we can stay within the topic of miniseries and start our alien discussion with V. I just remember it being stop everything television. I had stuff going on in school. We were in the middle of a school play that we were doing, and somebody brought in. Do you remember the little television sets where the screen was like this big and the thing was like, and you
The
had
Watchmen.
a handle?
It was
What's
called a Watchman.
No, pre-Watchmen. This thing was
really?
like this. Yeah, so the screen was black and white only, and it was probably this. It was like a huge radio box, is what it looked like. But it had a little screen, and then you would tune it in like a radio and with an antenna, and that's all we had. We brought it to school because the birth of Robin's alien babies was the day that we had to be at school. And you didn't know, is it gonna be green? Is it gonna look human? And it turned out being one of each. It was just incredible. And again, it still played to some of the, as much as it was a sci-fi badass show to make it still had some of the same important themes in it. You had people that were Jewish that had fought in World War II in the movie, their actors, their characters saying, no, this is what we do to resist. And there was the resistance against the visitors. People keep saying Sony Watchmen. Not exactly.
I don't remember which one you're talking about. And I was trying to look up. I was trying to remember the lady's name from the Supreme Commander, Jane Badler.
Oh, Diana?
Yes. Jane.
Oh, Diana was badass.
Yes.
What about her?
Nothing. I can picture her in my brain, and I was like, I didn't know her name, but I can totally picture her in my brain.
Okay.
So I had to look her up.
Is it one of those people that you thought once you saw her name, you're like, yes, that's who it is, and then you're like, no, that doesn't ring a bell?
No, never did not ring a bell. Not
Yeah.
one little thing. Nope, nope, not at
Something
all.
like this.
Oh yeah, I remember
Oh,
those.
Ours
Yes.
was black, but
Yeah,
that's the idea.
yeah,
And this thing weighed a ton. Yeah, it was Scott's got it right. It was like a boom box, but with a TV in it.
yeah.
It
Oh,
took like 42 D batteries, which is probably why it weighed a ton. But I remember taking this thing in, and I distinctly remember Mrs. Navertil yelling from like the side, saying, "Guys, you're on, you're on, you're on." And we're like, just a minute.
So when you brought the topic up of aliens, was it to talk about V or was it to talk about?
No, it's a broad topic of aliens because I think it's interesting as hell. Right now, I feel like we're living in the world we saw forecast by the television shows we watched. Whether it's aliens, whether it's AI, whether it's what's going on with computers, I have a hard time believing I'm actually living in the world I'm living in, and I haven't stepped foot into one of our movies. And I'm literally afraid of how it's going to end. But like, we're seeing congressional hearings which are literally focused on, have UFOs landed? You know, what classified information is there that we're not sharing? To this day, has anyone figured out exactly what the hell's been going on in your neck of the woods, Shell?
You mean
Those car-sized drones?
No, I don't even pay attention to any of that. Like, someone's going to tell me what it is at the end of, otherwise it's a don't ask, don't ask, don't tell. It'll be that's the wrong words for it. It'll be one of those, a need to know situation. And if they don't feel like we need to know, we ain't going to know, so, and they'll put out whatever news they want to.
Well, I think it's interesting that they have focused that drones are staying up north, because I can tell you, living in the South, that if those things were above us, they'd be getting shot down.
Which apparently,
there's no question people would be shooting.
It's illegal, right? It's illegal to shoot one down.
I think it's state to state. I think it's a state to state thing, but
it depends on how high it is. Because I know you only own so much airspace above your home. So if it's above that, then you're destroying somebody's property without cause.
Yeah, unless they're like, checking out your backyard, and your backyard, you're supposed to have some privacy. I mean, there is
even that's a funny little law. If you have your windows open, somebody could sit on the sidewalk and legally film you in the house if your curtains are open. If they're standing on public property and the public property has visual access to what you consider private, they can film all they want.
But that's
if your backyard,
right? But putting a drone in my backyard. No.
But if it's in public airspace, then they can. So as cameras get better, those laws are going to need to be revisited.
Absolutely. But I'm just saying, I can almost guarantee you that
I'm not arguing that point. They'd all be shot down.
They're very smart to keep them where they are and not bring them down below the Mason-Dixon.
Yeah, my buddy JC saying an old man did shoot it down and went to jail. Yeah, but then if they shot it down, then they have to know what these things are. So why aren't they telling us?
Need to know.
So, are there aliens? Do aliens exist? Question number 1 that I have for the panel. Does intelligent life,
I think there's intelligent life out there in the universe. I don't know if they've visited us, but the universe is massive. There has to be. They could be more intelligent than us. They could be in their caveman phase. We don't know, but there's got to be life out there.
Yes,
I think
absolutely. Life can take so many different forms. So, from a tiny bacteria somewhere else.
Right, but do you believe in intelligent life?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just not here on Earth.
Correct.
All right, second question. If extraterrestrial intelligent life exists, have we been visited here on Earth by them?
Chances are no.
You say no.
Scott? I say no.
All right, Chris?
I'm going to say, so I heard an interesting conspiracy theory on this.
I knew I had the right man.
And it involves Area 51 and like the UFO that supposedly crashed there. And what they said was it has nothing to do with the fact that they would freak people out if there were actual, aliens and what do we do now? And they're more intelligent than us and everybody freaks out and gets scared. And we know what humans on our planet do when they freak out. It's never good. But what the guy said was, think about this. If they have a UFO, something that could get from the other side of the universe or another galaxy or whatever here, and it doesn't require fossil fuels, And we had that technology and we could hone it so that you had this little thing that went into your car and you never had to put gas in it again for the rest of the car's life. How many people lose money over that?
A lot.
And that's what the guy was saying, is they're not hiding the aliens, they're hiding the technology that would allow us to go fossil fuel free. I thought it was a fascinating conspiracy theory. I don't know. It makes sense. He's like, there's no Exxon on the way to our galaxy from one to the other. So that we know of.
Well, and how the nearest star, I don't have the figures, that might be having planets capable of supporting life as we know it, is something like millions, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of light years away. So the technology they would have, fuel aside, would be to warp space somehow in order to be able to bridge the gap of actual space, because it would take hundreds of thousands of years traveling at the speed of light to get here. So I'm like, if they've got the technology to travel hundreds of thousands of miles at faster than light speeds, then what the fuck do they need to grab some guy out in the middle of a field somewhere and stick an anal probe up his butt? I'm like, the stories don't make any sense to me.
See, and that's knowing the vastness of space. It's what just the law of averages kind of thing, that we can't be the only happy accident, out there. And there is a something to be said for, in the past that however many years from now, like that there was some bacteria that we've carried up to Mars unknowingly, and that bacteria somehow will survive, and that it'll be Houston-based, a Houston-based life form, many, 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 whatever million years from now. And then, Mars could end up having its own, evolutionary cycle, somewhat like the Earth did. Those kind of things can happen. There are stars out there that are probable for life. There is one of the moons of, it's either Jupiter or Saturn, with an ice crust over top of it, with life forms underneath, with volcanic activity and water. And anytime you have that, then you have the potential of, like, the volcanic vents at the bottom of the ocean. You have the potential of a sulfur-based life form. So there's lots of possibilities out there. But whether this little crabby little thing decided to get, build this ship and somehow travel, like you said, millions of light years, and getting through a wormhole to get here. Let's pick here, with us barely able to not going backwards, not able to beat other humans with chains. Okay. Going back to roots and things. Right. Barely being able to do that. I saw one of the comments and they said they saw us and they left. Europa. Yes. Europa is the one I was thinking of. They can't, to me, that makes a lot of sense. They saw us and they were like, I don't want any piece of that.
Even them seeing us, though, is difficult. Let's imagine a telescope on one of those planets existed that was strong enough to see us. Because light travels so slowly comparatively, they'd be looking back at time. At best, they'd see dinosaurs, not us.
Correct. Yes.
So, I mean, all of it makes it so. So, do I personally believe there's alien life out there, intelligent life out there? I absolutely do. Proxima Centauri B, yes, Wirehead. That's the one I was going to say. I don't think we've been visited, because I don't think I just if we have, we would never know it. I certainly don't believe that Enos out in the middle of a field somewhere got taken up into their spaceship, and I don't believe any of that. Well, and if one of you have been abducted, I apologize. I'm sorry for what you went through. I think you're lying.
Well, I think it's. I mean, we always talk about intelligent life, but like I said, what if they're 50,000 years behind us?
Yeah.
I mean, what if they started after?
Well, I'm sure the answer is both, Chris. There's probably both sides of the equation. Yeah. The universe is so vast. There's probably intelligent life. It's like Star Trek. They had the prime directive. You couldn't talk to people that weren't warp capable, to sound like a total nerd. So other life had to be at a certain level before you were allowed to talk to them. And that's a great topic to bring in, is all the stuff. Our generation really exploded with science fiction.
Yeah.
Aliens were a huge part of us growing up. Superman was an alien, for crying out loud. I think people forget that. Enos got probed on Uranus. Yeah, something like that.
Close Encounters.
Close Encounters. Even before us, The Martian.
Alien Life Form.
We've
Alf.
always been fascinated by what we don't understand.
Yes.
Mm,
SNL skits, The Coneheads.
Oh my
yeah.
God, the Coneheads.
So many. I mean, Mork for Mork. Robin Williams remains a mainstay of my childhood and so many things that he did. And I just rewatched Mork for Mork, a bunch of the episodes. I just started streaming them for the fun of it, and it still holds up.
Mm.
Well,
People talk about us being like the Benjamin Buttons of generations because we're kind of aging backwards. Watching Mork reminded me we're probably more like Mirth from Earth because his son Mirth was born as a full-grown Jonathan Winters and they aged backwards.
that's right. But it even goes back to the radio show War of the Worlds when people legitimately believed that we were being attacked by an alien life form.
Mm-hmm.
That was what was it, 19? Somebody's going to correct me on this, but 1940 or somewhere in that range. But they did this radio show, which they did every Saturday. The radio shows, people would tune in, and they legitimately believed that we were being attacked. And because we didn't have quite the communications that we have today, it freaked people out, and people legitimately believe. So it's been something that we've talked about.
Which is why during another television event that happened in our lifetimes, the day after, they constantly kept putting little scrollers along the bottom saying this is a work of fiction. This is only a television show. This is not happening because people presumably, supposedly jumped out of buildings during War of the Worlds. I mean, people did horrible things. They thought it was real.
Mm-hmm.
I can't verify that, but I've heard that story.
Somebody just wrote Alf, alien life form. Yeah, I mean, we've been fascinated by this. And in a large part, post space race, there was the space race actually was a huge influence on television, toys, everything that you could think of was the space race had a huge impact on what we watched. That's the birth of things like Star Trek and the birth of things like Star Wars so many years later. These were all about space because it was the great unknown, and we were finally stepping into it at that point, late 60s. There we are. We have finally achieved, and I think people loved it.
And now we have an entire generation, maybe more than one, but I know especially with Gen Z, I'm sure there's more than a few Xers and boomers as well, and millennials that don't believe we went to the moon. But Gen Z, a large percentage of them grew up currently believe, I know many of them, they don't think we ever went to the moon.
I've heard that multiple times.
They're like, prove to me that we did.
Side
note, I think we did.
I have a moon rock.
You have a rock?
I have a rock. I will say too, though, that I'm kind of like, I don't know that we've ever been visited, but I will say things like the Nazca lines in Peru, if you've ever seen those, that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, hold on. Like, this is weird.
I don't know what the Nazca lines are.
You would know them if you saw them, John.
Yeah.
Just look up Nazca lines.
Lines into like shape of animals and like perfect. And you can see them from, up in the sky when you're in a plane. You look down and you see these massive, artwork of an animal or a bird. Who are they doing that for? I guess they were doing it for their gods, but still, like, how did they do that? And that's the kind of stuff that where I think like,
I've never seen this before.
Really, you've never seen the Nazca lines? Oh my goodness,
no.
Fascinating. Yeah. That kind
it
of
looks
stuff
like my front lawn when I'm having one too many beers as I'm mowing.
The stuff is fascinating, and I don't know. Like, I'm sure there's an explanation, but I don't know. I think it's more fun to believe. That's why I like to believe in Bigfoot, just because it's more fun to believe.
I just think that the science is there, the math is there. I think it's more easy for me to believe we went to the moon than it is that we went to Mars, because we went to the moon based on math. You can look and see the formula they used. There were literally rooms of women, a lot of them, sitting as human computers. The Hidden Figures is an amazing movie, plans it all out. And they had to literally pen and paper do the math to launch here and end up there because there's moving targets. We're moving, they're moving. I think it absolutely happened. Janet says, I believe the moon landing was fake, done in a studio. Well, Janet, you're wrong.
He's just like, well, Janet.
Janet. Janet would be life again. I'm not making fun of some new viewer who's help us. It's our buddy Life. Moon deniers are usually also flat earthers. Now shots fired. What do you mean? You're saying the Earth's not flat? I just think it's interesting. Again, a big part of our show is talking about the pop culture that shaped us. And the miniseries was television. Television shaped us. I almost get annoyed when I've got followers that are like, we didn't watch TV as kids. We were outside till the streetlights came on. Both things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
I was outside a lot and I consumed an ungodly amount of television. Both things are true. Mm-hmm. And I saw a lot of movies and I listened to a lot of music. All these things helped shape my everything. And aliens and the thought of aliens and science fiction and space and all that was a big part of it too. But it begs the question, how do we go from Roots to a Civil War miniseries to E.T., to aliens?
I had one actor in mind, but I don't think it works. So
you can give it a shot, especially if you don't think it's right.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just, when you talk about aliens, one of my favorite Louis Gossett Jr. movies is Enemy Mine.
Yeah.
Where he plays an alien. And I just couldn't connect him to North and South because I don't think he was in that. But he was in Roots.
He was in Roots, though. And that's a minor connection. I was going to bring up Iron Eagle and maybe play that one out, but I thought it was going to be too obvious.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, Enemy Mine I still love that movie. Great movie.
Shell?
I'm just going to go with the cheat at the beginning when I was reading the comments and somebody said Star Trek. So
Kevin came in with Star Trek.
I have no idea how, but I'm just going with whomever cheated.
Well, Vicky mentions LeVar Burton. So Vicky's got LeVar Burton sitting here, who was in Roots and who played the blind engineer with it looked like a banana clip on his face. Oh. I'm like, the world's cheapest costuming. Yeah. Let's take a banana clip and just throw it over his eyes and call it a day. But he played Geordie LaForge in Star Trek The Next Generation. So there's a connection. That gets us to 2. North and South?
Patrick Swayze was so gorgeous. He was an alien. Had to be.
Well, Patrick Swayze aliens gets us to Star Trek. The trick on this one would be connecting North and South. And Kevin, you lost. I'm waiting for you to come back. And now that it's an appropriate time to let us know how you made the connection. Did we lose, Kevin?
Yeah, Enemy Mine was.
You shamed him out of here.
Oh, he was here 10 seconds ago.
Enemy Mine was sad, Kristen. It was definitely a sad movie, but a really good one.
So Kevin actually got it early on. Yes, Kevin. So let's see. Where is it? Can you give us how we connect North and South to Star Trek? Because yes, Kevin, you're right. I will tell you, you are correct. That is the link. And there's actually 2 ways. I gave you as much time as I think I can. There are 2 ways to connect Star Trek to North and South. Number 1 is gone. Train just left the building. Number 1. So it's a caste relation. Give me a second. I'm lost. I apologize. Jeannie Francis's husband. Jeannie Francis was in North and South. She met her husband there. Her husband was also in the movie, in the show, and his name is Jonathan Frakes. And Jonathan Frakes both directed Star Trek The Next Generation episodes, and he was number 1. He played the executive officer on Star Trek The Next Generation.
I'm lost.
Can't remember the name.
I'm lost. Wait. I think this is payback. You were lost on my Christmas episode, and I'm pretty sure.
I just can't remember his name. Help me, someone.
Not a clue.
Oh, for the love of God. Who's number 1 in Star Trek?
Who is number
The
one?
executive officer, the guy with the beard.
Who is number two?
Oh my God, no one's helping me. And Google's not pulling it up.
I was not a Trekkie. So
No, but everybody knows this. Oh my God, I can't believe. Did the chat freeze? William Riker. Oh, thank God. Okay, so the first clip was Roots, and Roots is connected to Star Trek because Kunta Kinte played in The Next Generation. LeVar Burton was in both.
Yeah.
North and South, Jonathan Frakes also was in The Next Generation. He played William T. Riker. And then finally, aliens were on every Star Trek episode there ever was, so that's the third connection. Now, the other one that's a little less known is who was the one that replaced Diane on Cheers? Kirstie Alley. Kirstie Alley also played a Vulcan in Star Trek Wrath of Khan. And she was also in North and South.
I didn't realize she was in North and South. See, I didn't see North and South. She was
one of the daughters. She played Patrick Swayze's sister, who ended up marrying a black man, which, believe it or not, back in those days was not considered a thing you should be doing.
Well, yeah.
I was not a Trekkie. I think the connection's awesome. Like, yes. This is what this show is all about. Like, you did a nice job connecting all three. And
I thought the red herring would be that somebody would throw V out from Aliens, then you'd be like, well, the Connection's miniseries.
No, I know you better than that. That's way too easy.
Yeah, that would be too obvious and easy.
Yeah.
But the idea is, even when you take Star Trek, which is completely unrelated, all of these things had broader story arcs that talked about all things in pop culture. And they were event television. Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek the original series, the Star Trek movies became event-driven pop culture. The miniseries were event-driven pop culture. So many things related to aliens in those stories were event-driven pop culture. That's really the other side of it, is all these things just drove us to the movies, drove us to books, drove us to television in huge numbers, and we were all enjoying it together.
And we're still a team.
And the best part is we got to get toys because of it.
Oh, no.
Like, do you know Star Trek, the motion picture, is 45 years old now?
Wow.
45 years old. And my buddy, again, from Kryptonite Creations, he made this stuff for me. And I use it as props in my videos and stuff. But you're not a Trekkie. You know what this is.
I'm not a Trekkie, and I know what that is.
Yeah, there's no way you don't hear the sound, the beam me up Scotty that was never actually said when you hold it. I just think all of this stuff is cool. The fact that I said I remembered Kunta Kinte and Chicken George 45 years later, that's huge to me. This stuff stuck in our brains. This show is all about the stuff that's stuck in our brains. My chat is frozen.
Oh, wait, Vicky just said something really interesting, because I know when we were talking about Roots and stuff, one of the things that always goes through my brain is follow the drinking gourd. Okay. And the drinking gourd, of course, being the Big Dipper. And she just actually made another interesting side connection there that I think is actually pretty ingenious. That is a third connection. Do you see it up there? It's above Wirehead, where Vicky said.
Now finally just refreshed, and I'm just getting to all the William Rikers. Everybody's screaming to me the name that I can't remember.
No,
it's William Riker. Christmas.
But yeah, because when you were mentioning Space 2, I did think of Follow the Drinking Gourd, but I thought, well, that has nothing, North and South. That couldn't be the connection.
The Drinking Gourd?
It was a song sung by Black slaves, and as part of a secret way to tell each other where to go along their route. I don't know if it was always on the Underground Railroad. Along different routes to the north was follow the drinking gourd. Basically, follow the Big Dipper to the north.
The North Star.
Yeah. And that was they used song to be able to code what they were saying. And that was one of the, so Vicky made a nice point there.
Well, and it continues. So Star Trek movies are still being made. North and South is still out there. The themes continue. And, somebody mentioned my son met Will Wheaton at last year at Cannes. Big Bang Theory, Will Wheaton reprised his role himself, actually, and made fun of the fact that he played Wesley Crusher in TNG as part of that. So that introduced another generation to it. But my thoughts lately are around the new stuff that isn't new anymore. In our Christmas episode, we talked about Miracle on 34th Street, and we were like, well, which one, the new one or the old one? The new one's old as fuck right now. It's still old. It's to anybody but us old people. When we talk Star Trek, we're like, which one, the new one or the old one?
Yeah.
The new one being the Next Generation, which again is over 40 years old now.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me. I can't grasp that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never really, when you were collecting the Star Trek stuff, I was getting the Rambo survival knife. That was my thing. I was totally into like Soldier of Fortune magazine and all that stuff.
Phaser would have vaporized you before you had a chance to lift your knife. I would have won.
And
I had
we were
friends like
playing
you.
Barbies.
We had friends like you, and they're like, I'm Rambo. I'm like, I'm Kirk. Boom, you're gone. It's over. Game's over.
And wait, we've discussed this once before too. I was Strawberry Shortcake or Barbie or My Little Pony. I was my own little girl version of a hero that saved the day in some way too. We talked about this before, and I will justify that. We had our own little heroes. Mm-hmm.
My Little Pony were not heroes.
Yes, they did. They saved it. Each episode, they saved the day.
And now they have the BronyCon, which is really disturbing.
Yeah.
Really disturbing.
They have what?
The BronyCon. It's like grown men who dress up as My Little Pony characters, and they.
Oh God!
There's a group of grown men that just love My Little Pony.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh no!
This shocks you. This is why aliens don't visit.
Right. Exactly.
Because the aliens came, they saw the brony thing, and they were like, "What the fuck is this?"
Nope. I
see ya.
Comes back full circle.
Hey, I was coming back to give you perpetual energy, but you know what? I'm out of here.
On a different note,
we missed out on the secrets in nuclear fusion because of the bronies.
On a different note, somebody mentioned that there's a house, Wirehead. There's a house on the Underground Railroad near him that the song is on one of the plaques there.
Yeah.
And I actually wrote and still have. I think it was 5th grade or 6th grade. We had to do a report on somebody we considered a hero, and I did Harriet Tubman. And I still have it. It was like 5 or 6 pages, probably the longest thing that I wrote in my entire school career. But yeah, I was still to this day, obviously, but she is one of my top 5 in terms of heroes. And I found that report cleaning out my mom's house. I'm like, holy shit, I still have this report. This is insane.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, if you have even a passing interest in the Civil War in the Old South or period pieces, I think all of North and South is available for free on YouTube.
Really?
It still holds up. My in-laws wanted to watch it when they visited us a couple of years back, so we watched it then. It absolutely still holds up. The acting is excellent. The cast is incomparable. The locations, it's really good. And then V is always worth a look. I don't think there's a 3-year period that doesn't go by that I don't watch V again. Just absolutely loved it. The aliens lock their doors when they fly by. We're the bad neighborhood in the galaxy.
Roll them up.
We'll mature. The one thing Star Trek teaches is we will mature. And that's the other thing. So Star Trek First Contact, where we launch the first warp capable ship and meet the Vulcans that come and say live long and prosper, is supposed to happen in 42. Somebody tell me who's as big a geek as I am, but First Contact Day, which back then was like so far into the future, is only 30 or 40 years from now. I think it's like 42 years from now. So we're closely approaching the future that we predicted. We just have to see if it looks like what we thought it did. Space 1999 was my first instance of that when we had arrived in the future, and that was a vast disappointment.
Mine
Did you
is
ever watch
back.
Space 1999?
No.
No. Let me just say that they thought we'd be much further along than we were in 1999.
Mine was Back to the Future in 2015.
Well, and even that one, we were nowhere near where they thought we'd be.
No.
So I have to tie my shoes.
That's right.
Vicky,
Kinda
I've been to
Hoverboard's still not here
Gettysburg.
yet.
We kind of have hoverboards.
No. What, the wheel ones?
I mean, there are people who are doing them. They're just not on the market for purchase. But
Okay.
yeah, it's
I didn't realize we had
it's
flying
alien,
hoverboards.
alien technology.
Cool.
You haven't been to Gettysburg, Shell?
Yes, absolutely.
You
It was
have
like
not?
oh yeah,
Okay.
family's annual trip for a couple of years, and it's a very interesting place. Very interesting place. So much to see.
I'm just reading through the comments, but that's all I got for tonight, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. Took you on a little tour of Africa and the South and deep space and just everywhere.
Little history, little future. Yeah, I like it.
It was good.
I guess another recurring theme could be roots, where people weren't getting, the destruct, how we treated humanity, and then North and South, and the Civil War, and maybe the end of the Civil War, and maybe it looked like it was getting better. And I will say that by the time you get to Star Trek, there was a whole lot of like, hey, I'm kissing this alien lady. I don't care. I'm I'm doing it, a lot more of that too. So I don't know, maybe that's a connection.
Wirehead, I don't know if you're aware, but historians, people that watch like the Jetsons, not historians, but people that just really are more, have determined, they were able, based on an episode of the Jetsons, to determine when George Jetson would have been born, and he would be 2 years old right now.
Kristen wanted to know, will you repeat the tie-in for her?
So the tie-in from the three topics today, just to finish off, were roots, North and South, and aliens. And the tie-in was Star Trek, because Kunta Kinte was played by LeVar Burton, who was in Star Trek The Next Generation. Jonathan Frakes was in North and South, who played William T. Riker in Star Trek The Next Generation. And our third topic, aliens, you could find them in almost every single episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. So I guess you could put very specifically TNG as the topic, but Star Trek generally speaking. Did a much better job explaining it that time, didn't I? All the names went out of my brain.
Yeah.
And to be honest, what's her face? It wasn't going to be TNG. It was going to be Star Trek, because Cheers woman, whose name I can't remember now, Kirstie Alley, I didn't know Jonathan Frakes was in North and South until I started looking at the cast list. So I didn't even know there was a second connection to it until I was live on the air.
I mean, you're moving out of the 35 to 54 bracket, Nielsen bracket. So
not there yet.
Isn't this why we have
holding on as tightly as I can?
This is why we have our wonderful studio audience, which we would like to thank, because our wonderful studio audience fills in the gaps of the knowledge, the details, the things that we don't know, the things that we forgot, the things that we brain fart on because we are Gen X.
My chat froze.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I know the answer is coming. I can't see it. I just could not remember. My brain froze.
I can't
like
see
the dark coldness of space. It froze.
I can't see so good. I bring all my shoes and all my glasses.
Who's up next week?
I think it was Chris.
Yeah.
Chris? All right. Join us here next week, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll do this again, but this time it'll be Chris, who I'm sure will be far better prepared than I was, because although I played it off seamlessly and you couldn't tell, I literally came up with a topic about 5 minutes before we went on air. So.
And you did a fine job.
Yes,
I'm such a loser. I'm the slacker of the group.
No.
Love you guys. All right. Peace. See you next week. Same bad time, same bad channel.
Stay rad, everybody.
See ya.
I'm looking. It wasn't ready.
Keep waving.
Bye.
Yeah.
I'm waving. Oh my golly.
Oh my gosh, my golly.